There is plenty of fallout and reaction to a highly anticipated 60 Minutes interview with the former acting director of the FBI. Andrew McCabe says his instincts that the U.S. president may have had an inappropriate relationship with Russia came from the president's own words and actions. Donald Trump has been seething on this after the interview aired. And joining me now with more, CBC's Ellen Morrow in Washington. So, Ellen, let's start with the interview that aired last night. What did McCabe have to say about his concerns?
Well, Jennifer, this was an explosive interview that aired on 60 Minutes last night with Andrew McCabe, the former acting FBI director. Now, important to point out, there is absolutely no love lost between McCabe and President Trump. McCabe was fired several months ago by Trump's attorney general at the time, Jeff Sessions. Even before that, he was a frequent target of President Trump. And in this interview, McCabe spells out the issues he has with President Trump. He talks about a meeting in which President Trump said that he believed Russian President Vladimir Putin over U.S. intelligence agencies when it came to an assessment of North Korea's nuclear missile capabilities. That raised concerns for intelligence and for Department of Justice officials that, if true, that the president said that he believed Putin over U.S. officials. McCabe in this interview also talks at length about Department of Justice concerns over President Trump's fitness for office. Now, these concerns really came to the fore, McCabe says, after President Trump made the decision to fire former FBI Director James Comey. There were a lot of questions about Trump's motivation for doing that. He said in an interview, Trump himself, that he was thinking about the Russia investigation. McCabe talks about how they opened up an investigation into Trump after the firing of Comey. He also talks about how DOJ officials talked freely about the idea of using the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump from office. Now, that amendment is a complicated process, but essentially it allows a president to be removed from office if he is deemed unfit for the presidency. McCabe says that officials talked about that possibility and that former Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein even offered to wear a wire into the White House to gather evidence that President Trump is unfit in their eyes for office. Here's what McCabe had to say on that.
We talked about why the president had insisted on firing the director and whether or not he was thinking about the Russia investigation and did that impact his decision. And in the context of that conversation, the Deputy Attorney General offered to wear a wire into the White House. He said, "I never get searched when I go into the White House. I could easily wear a recording device. They wouldn't know it was there."
Now, just to give you more of a sense of the relationship between McCabe and President Trump, Jennifer, McCabe has a book coming out called The Threat: How the FBI Protects America in the Age of Terror and Trump. And he says the reason he was fired is because he opened up that investigation into President Trump after the firing of James Comey.
So, pretty explosive stuff, Ellen. What are we hearing from Donald Trump today?
Well, President Trump, not surprisingly, hitting back against these claims from Andrew McCabe. We can show you what he posted on Twitter this morning in one tweet saying, "Wow, so many lies by now disgraced acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe. He was fired for lying, and now his story gets even more deranged. He and Rod Rosenstein, who was hired by Jeff Sessions, look like they were planning a very illegal act." The president goes on in another tweet to call that act a treasonous insurance policy in full action. So the president angry that the use of the 25th Amendment was being discussed by these high-ranking officials. And it's not just President Trump who's angry about this. We heard as well from Senator Lindsey Graham, who's the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he's talking about potentially launching an investigation into all of this. Here's what Graham had to say.
What I can understand is why Mr. McCabe would meet with Page and Strzok to discuss their hatred for candidate Trump, talking about taking an insurance policy out in case the election went different than they want. So Mueller will tell us about what Trump did or didn't do. I'm going to tell the country about McCabe and the people at the Department of Justice and how they behaved. Did they take the law in their own hands? Did they abuse the FISA warrant process because they had a political agenda? Did their hatred...
So a lot of fallout over this, Jennifer, and this is just the latest example of the difficult relationship between President Trump and the intelligence community here.
Indeed. Thanks for the latest, Ellen. CBC's Ellen Morrow in Washington.